Thank you, Joth. We're into the home straight. The wheels are down. We'll be landing shortly. So just keep your wits around you for these last, 15 minutes, if that, 20 minutes, something like that. So just before this last little section. So what I hope you've just done in those smaller groups is I hope you were able to identify just some steps that you could take, something you could do this week, something you could do next week in terms of what's resonated from you. What we just want to spend a couple of minutes doing, what Joth and the team have asked Chris and I to do, is just reflect for a moment or two, just as a last thing, on the challenges of COVID. And Chris is going to just take 5 minutes to do that. I'll take 5 minutes to do that. And then just a last chance just for a couple of minutes to pray in your groups. If we get the timing all right, that's how it should work. But just before I hand over to Chris, just to share some of his reflections on the challenges of COVID, just chatting in our breakout groups with Joth, I thought Joth made a really helpful comment from his perspective of leading both what would be deemed a smaller church and what would be deemed a larger church, just in terms of some of that discussion. So I asked, and Joth was willing just to give us a minute on that. So Joth, if you would just share that reflection, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Just very quickly, my little thought on it, having led a smaller church and sought to lead them in mission, and also led what was perceived to be a larger church as well, I just found that the smaller church in some ways was lighter for change, if I could put it that way. A larger church does so much more that it is difficult to motivate everyone in mission, whereas a smaller church can be much more united and doesn't need the massive resource to be missional and to move forward and to see people come to faith. So that's just my reflection. In some ways, I enjoyed both churches, but I saw more fruit, closer fruit, in a smaller context than a larger one.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, Joth. Really, really helpful, just as a reflection there, and just recognises the breadth of churches that are represented here. Chris, I'm going to hand over to you. We're asked just to share from our perspectives a very broad kind of title of the challenges of COVID. So we've not shared notes or discussed together, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of both our mouths. But just a few minutes from you, Chris, first would be great. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So just a couple of points. We've not got much time, but my thoughts are, obviously it's been quite a challenging environment, and particularly the pace of change was really dramatic at the beginning when we went into lockdown, first time round, very fast moving, and I think one of my key lessons in that is one of the things that's great here in the group that we've got is we've got a load of paid workers, ministers, and we've got a lot of volunteer lay leaders as well. And one of my lessons is really to put yourself in each other's shoes and think about the impact from their point of view. So, particularly when everything was fast moving, needed to be very reactive, how you respond, changing, can't have services next week, we're going to have to put on something online or whatever it is, had to be responded really, really quickly. And usually, and my experience from our church was that was the main leaders were doing that, the paid leaders or leader was involved in doing that. And that was great. But what it could do was those that were in the leadership teams who were not part of that might have felt a bit left out, not quite sure what was happening, feeling very uncertain. And because there was such a focus from the paid folk on trying to get it rightly, absolutely rightly, that there was a bit of catching up to do from the lay leaders. Equally, from the paid leaders' point of view, we lay leaders weren't perhaps thinking about these things all the time, and it might lead to the paid leaders feeling unsupported, or those that are more leading that, they might feel unsupported. That those of us that are not in those roles, we've got other things to think about, and we don't understand the pressures and the intensity of those things that were happening. And I think it's a very my plea really is just to think about in the leadership team sense, what is it like if you're the minister, if you're a lay leader? Think about what is it like, all that pressure and all that's going on. And similarly, what is it like as a paid minister or a full-time or part-time? What's it like for those lay leaders who are not thinking about that all the time? And can you step into each other's shoes and try and support each other a bit more? That was one reflection. And the second reflection, again, this won't be rocket science to anybody, but it's a huge challenge of communication, isn't it? And I personally have missed the interaction of meeting with people on a regular basis. And I'm a very person-orientated person. If I bump into someone, I'll say, "How are you?" And you'll sense how they are, and they'll start talking, and you'll pick it up, and you'll go on from that. And that isn't available as easily in the COVID situations that we face and are still facing. So there's a real challenge of getting connected. And again, I think there might be a bit of a difference between those of you that are leading churches as full-time or part-time people dedicated to that, as to lay leaders. I think that there might be more connection with individuals in terms of people phoning, text messaging, emailing the designated leader. And that's possibly not the same for the lay leader. So it's perhaps harder to get a sense of how people are feeling, where they are in their thinking. So again, it's about trying to put yourself in each other's shoes and create this ministry team that are all on the same page together. And we've had our real challenges at Beacon. It's not always been great. There's been divergence. So somehow we've got to think of ways of encouraging that interaction and encouraging that testing of the water and understanding where people are and finding creative ways to keep on speaking to people and not just keep speaking to a small group. So you might be in a house group, you just hear those voices, whereas if you're going to a church meeting, you'll see other people and they'll bring views and feelings and senses and challenge to that. So it's about trying to get that broader, work hard at trying to hear the voice of other people. That's a couple of quick reflections from me.
Thanks, Chris. That's interesting. As I say, Chris and I hadn't chatted about this, but my number one reflection that I was going to share and put out there was about unity and communication. That more than our unity, I wouldn't have said as a church people, but our unity as a leadership team, as a collective, has been stretched to the max, and in one or two places is without doubt broken for the reasons Chris has articulated, actually. And so my first point was about unity and communication. That actually one of the challenges of COVID and ongoing challenges of COVID is keeping unified through keeping communication channels open in new and creative ways, over communicating more than ever, because you're not having all those tiny little conversations and rubbing shoulders with each other anymore, and people have caught themselves in echo chambers of the same relationships or same small groups. So I won't say more on that because Chris has said it already and said it better, but that unity communication is there. My second of just three reflections, I've given the title exhaustion. So I don't know about you, as a paid person in the church, I don't think I've ever had to work as many exhausting hours, energy-wise, not necessarily literally hours in the day, but just the absorption of my energy. I've never known anything like it over such a sustained, ongoing period. It's just non-stop. It just seems never to be stopping, and coming from every angle, from logistic and organizational, because things are changing all the time, the pastoral, just is unbelievable, wave after wave of pastoral stuff, and then things like the disunity, that is just heartbreaking at times, just eats your energy. So there's definitely something about exhaustion. I'm not someone who struggled with mental health or emotional well-being. I've been shielded for that for all my life up until this point, but I will be open enough to say, that I have found myself in times, Chris knows, it's sometimes been with him and the other elders, just in tears, just for no real reason other than, the tank is very, very empty, and I'm just finding life really hard. So there's just that exhaustion reality of what is going on. And I just want to recognize lots of us will be in that space. I certainly am. And then the last thing just to say, it's like a very different tone really, but is the other challenge of COVID is the great opportunity of COVID. They go hand in hand, don't they? And I think for lots and lots of churches, this is our great moment to do things we probably should have done a long time ago in reimagining how we do church. So I think churches are we're realizing that we were never about an event that happened on Sunday morning. We're about relationships. Mission and discipleship are done through relationships. And when we gather, it's like the family that gather for a family meal. It's for a purpose of relationships. And we've become about an event, a Sunday morning sacred 90 minutes event. And that's a disaster. And COVID is this great opportunity to realize we should be about relationships, releasing those relationships, enabling those relationships, to move away from being established and becoming a movement of people, to move away from being a cruise ship. This is the image in my head, that we've been a cruise ship, this big bulky thing, and we need to let the cruise ship rust somewhere and become a fleet of lifeboats, still unified together, one fleet, but actually everyone involved in steering their own boat and building relationships in their own boat and going to rescue people. And I think there's great opportunity to see God evolve us as churches in something we should have done a long time ago, but probably the encultured anchor didn't allow us to do that. So they're my, in addition to Chris's unity and communication aspect, I also would add the sheer exhaustion of this time. And then secondly, the great opportunity that is potentially there to become what we should have become a long time ago as churches, but is helpfully being forced upon us. So, bit of a whistle-stop tour there, wasn't it? I think the best thing to do is put us back into those breakout groups for the last 5 minutes and just pray for one another's hearts. I don't know what your experience in your breakout group has been. They can sometimes work brilliantly, sometimes less so. But I just want to invite you to go back into those groups and reach out to each other in prayer, in love, in thinking about COVID challenges and speaking to God about each other. And then it's back together at 12:55 just to wrap things up with the SCBA team. So if we can drop into those groups, that would be great, Chris. Thank you.
And then Alex and Chris, it's been so inspiring, so stimulating. And we have been, we've had loads put in the well, but we need to, as it were, get it out a bucket at a time and actually see what's in there that we need to sort of act on and take away. But we're so grateful to you both. And it's been lovely that you've shared it. So thank you for that sense of empowerment that's marked the whole occasion today. There are two things I want to do just by way of summary. The last one is a prayer, but the first one is to go back to something which has really resonated, Alex, that you shared. And that is about people's tiredness and how hard going this has been. And I wanted just to take us back to Isaiah chapter 40, where intriguingly, there's this recognition of being in exile, being in a place which is not familiar, where everything is difficult and hard going, and that sense of abandonment that you can feel. And then God lovingly says, why do you say, oh, Jacob? I like that. It's that manipulative striving, Jacob. Why do you speak, oh, Israel? And then that recognition of that new Israel, that new people that's being brought into being. My way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who, and here's the prayer thing that we've had throughout today, those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and it could have said swim as well. They shall walk and not faint. And walking is fine, by the way. God, who wants to strengthen us and encourage us through one another and through what we've heard from him today. So here's the prayer, and this is now jumping to the New Testament, Colossians chapter 1. It's the version from the Message. And it's the prayer that the Apostle Paul offers for all the saints, not just the leaders, all of the saints at Colossae. And it's a fantastic prayer that seems to cover quite a lot of your points, Alex, that you made in your principles. So I don't want to twist the scripture to make it fit, but there are quite a few that are there. So here's a prayer for all of us, and then we're done for today. So here's the prayer. Let's pray together. The Apostle Paul prays and says, we haven't stopped praying for you. We're asking, and here I want to ask it now, may God give you wise minds and spirits attuned to his will, that you may acquire a thorough understanding of the ways in which God works. Our prayer is that you'll live well for the Master, making him proud of you as you work hard in his orchard. And as you learn more and more about how God works, you'll learn how to do your work. The prayer is that you'll have the strength to stick it out over the long haul, not the grim strength of gritting your teeth, but the glory strength that God gives. It's strength that endures the unendurable and spills over into joy, thanking the Father who makes us strong enough to take part in everything bright and beautiful that he has for us. And the people of God say together, Amen.
Inspire, connect,
resource, growing healthy churches
is in relationship for God's mission.